From Yellowhammer News, this is One Day at a Time, presented by Longleaf Recovery and Wellness. Join me, Laurie Dhue, as I speak with industry leaders about the challenges and solutions surrounding substance use disorder and mental health issues facing so many people here in Alabama. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of One Day at a Time, where we are putting a priority on having important conversations about substance use disorder and mental health in the state of Alabama. I'm your host, Laurie Dhue, and I've been in continuous recovery for 17 years. Joining us today is Alabama Speaker of the House, Nathaniel Ledbetter. Mr. Speaker, thank you so much for joining us today.
No, it's good to be with you. Thanks for the invitation.
Well, you are welcome, and it's wonderful to have someone of your stature joining us today to talk about two of the most important things facing our country, but really facing Alabamians every day.
Right.
And that is mental health and substance use disorder.
Absolutely.
So I guess my question is, tell us about the origins of your involvement with mental health.
Well, it's a process of once we got started, I think a lot of things had evolved, but over the last few years, I'm really proud of the state and the steps we've taken. And my involvement started out in my office. Now, I've told the story before, but it's always busy. You got 2 or 3 people lined up to see you, and I was majority leader at the time, not speaker. And I had like 3 different groups to see me. One of them was actually Senator Tuberville. He'd come by to talk to me about his Senate race, and I had a group at my conference table of CEOs from Coca-Cola and Pepsi that was looking for CDL license for interstate for Alabama, just inside the state, and another group in the corner. And I was trying to move along as quickly as I could, and I was really in a rush to get everything through and maybe get to the last one. And so the people that was there from Coca-Cola and Pepsi and some of those other groups had gotten done, and the group in the corner come up and they were talking about mental health. And it was actually from CED Mental Health from my area, which is Cherokee, DeKalb, and Etowah. And they went around the table and was talking, and it was the lady at the end of the table, which was from my district. And at the time, I didn't know that. But she said, Representative Ledbetter said, I have done some research on you, and I know you got 2 boys and 4 grandchildren. And I said, yeah, I'm blessed. And she got to talk about her son. And she said, my son has had a mental health issue, and said we have tried to get him help, and it seems like the more we try, the worse it gets, and we continually try to get him help and hadn't been able to get him the right help. He gets worse, and said, we totally feel like the system has failed us. But she asked me that day, so let me ask you a question. I said, what if one of your sons were in this situation? What if one of them was in mental distress, and you had tried and you felt like the system had failed him? Said, what if your son got in an altercation with a police officer that didn't understand mental health, and in that altercation he was shot and killed? And I said, it was one of those things where everything that I was trying to do in the business of the day just kind of stopped. And when she looked at me and she told me, she said, because that was my son.
Oh, my goodness.
And she said, so what if it was your son? So I think the reality of it at that point, when you're talking about family and about people you love and care for, it kind of changes everything.
Kind of brings it home.
It does. And, it was like, you're always busy trying to move along and get to know, you want to be mindful of everybody's time. And then all of a sudden, something like that comes up. That
moment may have changed your life.
Well, it certainly has been impactful to my life. And I've always said, and I feel like this, I think the good Lord puts you where he wants you to be. And, maybe at that moment I was put in that position for a reason. After that, we have a meeting with the governor. Leadership has a meeting with the governor, and we're talking about all the things that were happening in Alabama. Alabama's grown with its economy, just unbelievable. And so we kind of went around the table, was talking about that. And I told the governor that day, I said, Governor, I am so proud of our state and the growth that we've had and everything's going on. But I said, we are failing the people of this state miserably when it comes to mental health.
That was what I was going to ask you about, because obviously, I was doing some research about you prior to this interview, and that was your quote. You said, we are failing the people of Alabama miserably in mental health. So when you spoke with Governor Ivey about it, what did you all talk about, And what did she task you with?
It was kind of interesting. And so once I started that conversation, of course, we had the leadership from the Senate and the leadership from the House, along with the governor's staff. And the conversation, just by saying it, took off. It was people from Jasper and people from Huntsville and people from Mobile, and that come, say, we got a problem. We got a problem in our schools. And one of them said, I just met with my school people, the superintendent, and they said that's their number one problem. So it kind of evolved. And at the end of it, the governor asked me, said, well, Representative Ledbetter, if I ask you to try to do something with mental health, would you do it? And I said, well, Governor, if you ask me to, I will. And she said, well, I'm asking. So that was kind of how everything started, and I went back to the office and told the girls, I said, we've been tasked to try to work on this mental health issue, but in my mind, I think it's a higher level than the governor that's put us in this position.
I mean, it could be the ultimate high level,
right?
That power that keeps us alive and safe every day.
That's right.
Something that's very encouraging is something that happened the third week of September, which is the Pediatric Crisis Care Unit that opened in South Huntsville. Would you tell us about that? You must be very excited about it.
I am. I know we've opened up in the process with the one in Troy. There'll be 6 crisis care centers since that conversation. And, of course, I'm excited about that. I don't think it's in question that they have saved lives, and the mental health folks have done a tremendous job, and I give them a lot of, the credit for doing the work. We've helped fund it, but certainly they're the ones out in the field and out in the state doing the work. I think you and I talked about it earlier, but mental health to me is like a puzzle. I think you always have to continue putting the pieces together, and having the adolescence wing of the center in Huntsville open up was a huge deal, because it was really, right now as it stands, it's really the only one of its kind in Alabama. And to see what we were trying to do, when we had all the conversations, we formed a committee, put people from all walks of life on it, and certainly educators and probate judges and, Senate and House members, the governor's staff, lieutenant governor's staff, everybody was engaged. But one of the things we come out with, it was kind of interesting, because when we started the dialogue, my superintendent in my city school at the time, he had hired a mental health coordinator in his school. And I asked him, I said, how's that going for you? And he said, it's the best thing I've ever done. Think about that. The 30-year educator, been superintendent probably for 20 years of that, 15 anyway. And he told me it's the best thing I've ever done. What
do you think he meant by that? Why do you think it's been rewarding for him?
Well, I think after we had the conversation and I had invited him, I said, well, if it's the best thing you've ever done, you got to come and tell us why.
Right.
So he come and spoke to the committee, but he brought the lady that was doing the job, and the young lady knocked it out of the park. And what I guess was really mind-blowing to me, it was from my county, and to see the number of kids, and of course she didn't name kids, but she had numbers, the number of kids that she had been engaged with, the number of kids that had gotten help after talking to her, and the number of kids that was put on medication that needed it. And it was amazing. And I knew at that time we had to have mental health coordinators in every school system in Alabama. And so since that time, we've done that. But, the adolescence part, I think we started it with those coordinators, but we didn't have a facility. So to see Wellstone open up that facility in Huntsville is just a part of what we were doing, I think, in the school systems. So I think it was a big deal.
It is a very big deal. And we really have to take care of our young people.
Yeah, I think today, and I think they're under more pressure probably than they ever have been.
Well, I think they are. The advent of social media in many ways has been exciting, and it's certainly helpful in many ways. But I do believe that the peer pressure, because of social media, has made it extraordinarily stressful to be a young person.
Well, one thing that I have always stressed to our members, we have the school shootings, which is tragic, and we shouldn't, we've got to continue to work on that problem. And, we've lost life recently, which is devastating to any family that loses life. But if you think about the number of suicides because of mental health, the United States has last year, I think it had over 42,000 suicides
in
the United States alone. And I think it was just 2 years ago, that the cause of death for 18 and under is suicide is the number one cause of death. So I think we've got a crisis in our country. And, I'm proud of our state. I'm proud of our members, proud of the governor, because I think to some extent, we were so far behind. When everything gets cut, it's usually the one that doesn't make the wheel that doesn't squeak the loudest. And it had been cut back to nothing. And in the last 4 years, I know we've started this 5-6 years ago, but we've invested over $232 million a year now into mental health. And I think it's making a difference. And, because of the statistics we just talked about, there's no question that social media is really something that our kids and grandkids, I think it puts a lot of pressure on them that you and I probably didn't have growing up.
Well, no. I mean, I grew up in the 70s and 80s. I think you did too.
Right.
We didn't have these kinds of pressures. I talk about this a lot, and it's something that I address on the platform that I helped create and launch, recoveryeducation.com. And that's an educational platform for parents.
Right.
Who I feel are so important. Families are the key, I think.
Yeah, I think the thing that's been surprising to me the most, especially when it comes to social media, is to find out there's a lot of these different chats and a lot of different apps that I know absolutely nothing about, but these kids get on and things are shared or given. And some of it's information that you wouldn't want your kid normally to have. But the parents sometimes don't really know because they don't know the different type of chats or apps that they're on. And I think it makes it more difficult to parent even when it comes to that.
I think you're absolutely right, Mr. Speaker. And we know that kids are buying drugs on TikTok and Snapchat. It's happening here in Birmingham. It's happening all over the state, all over the country. And there's not a whole lot that parents can do. The parents are not aware of the signs and symbols that indicate certain drugs, like smiley face and,
Sure.
A ski slope means cocaine and things like that. And I think it is incumbent upon parents and teachers and the whole communities to come together on this.
Well, it is. And, we have invested in the educational aspect of it too. Not only do we have the mental health coordinators in each school district, but we've also invested in programs in schools and even in elementary schools. So we get those signs so they understand, kids understand what they need to be looking at. One of the things we started a peer-to-peer program, which I supported and was very appreciative of. But, the fact of the matter is it doesn't matter if it's kids or if it's adults or teenagers, they're going to talk to their peer before they talk to anybody else. Right. So the kids are going to talk to each other. And, being able to go in those school systems, say, listen, if you got a friend that's maybe saying, I don't like myself or things are not good, then you got to know how to talk to them. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. The thing I feel strongly about, and I have groups that I go talk to all over the state, but my favorite group is the teenagers and the young people. As a matter of fact, a group from here in Birmingham came down last year, and the sponsor, I seen him today. I said, "Are you going to bring them back this year?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "I want to talk to them." I think our job as parents and certainly as leaders for young people is to let them know, first of all, they matter. We care about them. We love them. People around them love them, and understand that you got somebody you need to talk to. Go talk to them. I mean, they're not going to hurt your feelings or embarrass you, but I think how it is with peer pressure. A lot of times there's things that's said that kids really don't mean, but it comes out or it hurts other people. Words matter.
I'm so glad you said that. Words do matter, especially to a developing brain, a young person who has hormones raging. Mm-hmm. They already don't have control over their emotions. And then somebody looks at them the wrong way or says the wrong thing, and that can be very triggering.
Well, it can. And, even in the last year, you think you go into this. When we first started this mental health program, I had no idea I may have anybody involved. But since that time, we'd spoke about that earlier. I've had people I work with committed suicide, and then my son went through an issue with one of his football players with his father. So, I mean, you never know. Even though it may not be on your doorstep today or tomorrow, there's a good chance that somebody in your community or somebody or somebody you care about could be having an issue today. So it's important that we are able to talk about it. And I appreciate what you do and appreciate you doing this. because I do think that in my mind, what I've learned over the last few years, mental health is just as important as physical health. And I'm glad we're able to talk about it now. Where used to, we wouldn't.
Right. It has been so stigmatized, and I'm so grateful to Longleaf Wellness and Birmingham Recovery Center and Yellowhammer News for saying this is important. So, they're sponsoring us to be able to do this podcast to get the word out there. And then we have state leaders like you who give a darn. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, Longleaf Recovery and Wellness. Longleaf Recovery and Wellness is elevating the standard for addiction and mental health treatment in Alabama, offering exceptional and personalized care at centers in Birmingham, Huntsville, and Baldwin County. Life-saving programs offered at Longleaf provide a path to real change and support for a restored life long-term. Learn more about Longleaf Recovery and Wellness at longleafcenters.com. A big thank you to our sponsors, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Alabama and Southern Ketamine and Wellness. We had the opportunity to speak with the Attorney General recently, and Steve Marshall, and Marshall is a good last name for him because he has been able to marshal and garner hundreds of millions of dollars in opioid settlement money for the state of Alabama. So, if you could speak to that. We don't know where all of this money is going to go,
right.
But from what you know about it, are you pleased with the way the money is being spent?
Well, I think, first of all, what people have to understand that they're guardrails. The federal government, or the courts, I should say, would just let us spend it in a certain realm. There's a lot of things we'd like to put it into that we can't because of how it was settled. It's got to be for the opioid crisis or something that affects opioids. So I think from what they do and what the committee's been able to do, which I have appointments on the committee, the chairman in general and members as well, I think they've done a good job. I mean, it's the beginning of it. It's the start, and we certainly have more work to do, but I have a ton of confidence in Chairman Reynolds that chairs that committee, and I know he's going to do the right thing. It's kind of interesting. So once I had transitioned from majority leader and going into the speaker's role, I'd asked Chairman Reynolds to take over the mental health. And the reason I did that, I don't think we need to stop. I think you got to continually work on it and continually do better things for our mental health. So I'd ask him to take it over. So it was an easy pick for me, one, because he's my chairman of the general fund, two, because he's been working on mental health for me. So, and he used to be the chief of police in Huntsville, and then was the administrator for the city of Huntsville. So the knowledge that he has gained through the years is valuable. So him being in that role to me is something where I can lay down and sleep at night and know what's going on has been done right.
I mean, it's interesting having that law enforcement background. You can only imagine what he has seen and experienced and is now bringing to the table. Do you think that's important? Oh,
there's no question that's important. I mean, if the thing that I see that has happened since we really started getting this program going is the engagement from so many other people. And I had asked him when we first got started to increase our CIT training, which is, it's crisis intervention for police officers. So we did. We doubled the amount of time that they have to have when they get the certification. So he did a really good job with that. We got that done. But because of that, the important to the police officer that protects the area, it's just as important for him to identify it for his safety as much as for the people that he protects safety. So I thought that was a big deal. We got that passed, and Chairman Reynolds certainly is the one that carried that water. And I'm so appreciative of the work he's doing. So, I'm really excited about what's going on. And, of course, as you know, AG Marshall has had some issues of his own. And so that he and I have sat down and talked about that on different occasions. And when we first got this started, I had somebody in my office that their brother had committed suicide. And I called him. I said, have you got just a few minutes? Can you come to the office? And he came over and sat down and talked to her. And me listening, I wasn't in the conversation, but me listening to both of them, it's pretty tough.
It is tough. And, the Attorney General has been so forthcoming about sharing about his wife's suicide from mental health issues. And I feel like when people share their experiences or someone in their family who's been impacted or has died because of a mental health issue or a substance use issue, it creates an environment that is free from shame,
Right.
that educates people, that lets people know that it's okay to talk about it.
No, I think you're 100% right. I think one of the things that we see today that we didn't see when you and I were growing up, or even in the last 10 years, if I'm being honest about it, you see professional athletes, you see actors, you see people talk about it. One of the guys that I had listened to talk about it, and then, if you could say job well done, would be Carson Daly. I mean, I see him on the Today Show, and he has no shame talking about his issues. I mean,
neither do I. Right?
Well, if you had it's kind of funny. The older we get,
Yeah.
we talk about our issues with our knee or our hip, or we have to have it. So there's no different. I mean, if you're going to talk about health issues, mental health is just as big an issue as physical health. So I guess from the standpoint of seeing that and what's going on in our country, I'm kind of glad to know that it doesn't have the stigmatism that you mentioned earlier.
Thank you for saying that. Those of us who are activists, if you will, in this space, we always say, look, you go to your doctor. If you, like, I had a toothache this week, I went to the dentist and got it taken care of. We have a knee problem, a shoulder problem, whatever. We don't feel good. We literally go to the doctor.
That's right.
We have to go to the doctor when we don't feel good with our mental health. Get a checkup from the neck up.
Yes.
As the saying goes.
That's right. That's right.
So I'm glad that you're speaking out about this because people listen to you. You have a platform.
Well, I've thought about that a lot, to be honest with you. I kind of, growing up in rural Alabama in a rural setting and not a lot of means. I mean, you wonder why you get elevated to a position like this. I think sometimes it's like we talked about, you're there for a reason. And, while you're in the platform, you need to use it. And so I think I will always continue to try to do that as long as I serve. It's important to me because I know how I grew up and I know how other kids are having to struggle to grow up. And you can make it out. You can, I was talking to my folks coming up to Birmingham today, and I said, with some of the things going on in Birmingham, we were talking about that. And the people I know that serve with us in the house and people I've talked with over the last 2 days have had family members that's been affected. And so it matters that we can have conversation. I think that's so important.
I do too. We have to be transparent about these things because too many people die because of mental health and substance use issues. And that's not okay with me. And I'm sure it's not okay with you either. When you and I were recently speaking, I said, if you could snap your fingers and make something change, you said, I would try to improve education and support in the areas that are the most poverty stricken. If you could elaborate a bit on that.
Yeah. I think sometimes that we as leaders, we put everybody in the same basket. We put all the money in certain programs for education and hoping that it trickles down to where it needs to be. But I do believe there are areas in our state that needs lifting more.
Yes.
I am so proud of people like Hoover that can afford to do the things they do. I think that's great. But the kids in Wilcox County deserve the same opportunity. And that's my thing is I don't know because of the way the budgeting process and the mechanism is, sometimes that doesn't happen. And, it's not taking anything away from anybody. I think it's great that Hoover's able to do what they do, or not just I'm naming them, but any affluent school that has the means. But I think a rising tide lifts all ships. And I do believe that there are some things that we can do in areas where in Alabama that were more poverty stricken to uplift education. And I will certainly give credit to the budget chair. Of course, Danny Garrett is a close friend of mine. I put him over the education budget. He's from right here in Jefferson County, and he does a tremendous job. And he is certainly mindful of that. And he and I have had that conversation, and he's working to try to change some of the budgeting process so those kids have as much opportunity.
And that's the key, is giving children opportunities and letting them know that they have a future.
That's right.
And you were specifically talking about the Sabin Center in Tuscaloosa.
Right.
If you could just speak to that for a moment.
I had a chance to have lunch with Coach Saban, Miss Terry Monday.
Lucky you.
Well, it was, it was great. I mean, listen, I'm a football fan, and I have to give myself out. I'm an Alabama fan. Of course, I have to caveat that because it's one of the reasons because I've put a lot of money down there with my kids. But the passion that Coach Saban and Terry has for kids and for improving education in our states to be commended. And I told them that. And the thing that I want to see with the investment that the state makes in the Saban Center is that we ensure that those kids in the Black Belt have the opportunity to learn what STEM is about and what they can do as far as having an opportunity to have something that they can get involved in that may help them for the rest of their lives as far as education, workforce development, and those type things. And, Coach Saban, Miss Terry both are on the same page. They feel the same way. And certainly with it being at the edge of the Black Belt, I think they got a great opportunity to do that. One of my biggest questions is, how are you going to get them here? I want to know that they have got the opportunity to come and be at this facility. So they were gracious enough. We went through all of it, and I certainly applaud them for the work they're doing.
Well, if anybody can make stuff happen, it's Coach Saban and Miss Terry.
Well, it is, and to see what they're planning on doing, and the thing that I like, and we have started more and more of this in Alabama, especially in the last 2 or 3 years, and I give a lot of credit to people like Jeff. Jeff Peoples, the CEO of Alabama Power, or Jimmy Rain at Yellowwood, and we've talked about this, and certainly Coach Saban fits that mold where you're seeing more and more of private-public partnerships, and it's hard for us to say, we're not going to give money to this program when they've raised over $100 million for the facility themselves and have taken money out of their pocket. And, they're not just talking the talk, they're walking the walk. And, of course, we all love Coach Saban. It's Alabama fans anyway for what he's done. And he certainly has been a figure for this state that has put us on the map. But I think people forget what he and Miss Terry do for our communities.
Yes. And a reminder, just now for our listeners.
That's right.
Lest we forget.
That's right.
So why do you do what you do? Why does this matter so much to you?
Yeah, I think it goes back to how I was raised. And I think we lived in lower Appalachian Mountains, and we didn't have a lot. But I always am mindful of the people in the community that was there and was able to help us when we really needed help. And so for me to go through that and the good Lord to be able to allow me to do what I've done, I think I would be remiss if I didn't try to pay it forward. And I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, you grow up as a child, and I told somebody the other day I actually had done a podcast for Fred Hunter, and I know you know Fred, but he was asking me about it, and I said, we run around barefooted where I grew up, and we didn't always have a way to go. We didn't always have a car, and so the people in the community made sure that I got where I needed to go, and they took care of me. And so I think if they've done that for me, and a lot of those people now are gone, then it's my job to pay it forward. And I think the good Lord has put me in a position and a platform to pay it forward, and not just in my community but across the state. And, certainly don't do it for the money, because I don't, I make a lot less now than I did when I had a real job. But I do believe, that's part of it. Of course, I think all of us that have kids or grandkids want to make it better for them.
Earlier, you said the Lord puts you where he wants you.
Mm-hmm.
This must be where he wants you.
Well, I think I have to keep that in the back of my mind all the time.
So you also told me that you think it's really important. You mentioned communities earlier, that it's important for us to come together as all these communities around the state of Alabama, but to really come together to support our young people and to support our various communities, because the world is so challenging these days.
That's true. Yeah, even though we grew up in a time where it was probably a little harder. I mean, let's be honest. I didn't know what a remote control was till I was married. I thought everybody went up and turned the TV.
Well, we did. We walked across the shag carpeting.
That's right. Or the linoleum floor. And if you didn't get the channel good, you went outside and moved the antenna around.
Or you put the tinfoil.
Or you put the tinfoil.
That's right.
That's right. So the life. Let's be honest. Life was a little simpler then.
Yeah.
And I think kids face challenges today that we never even dreamed of. So I think it's more important now than it ever has been that communities put their arms around our kids and say, it matters. You're our future. And I've told kids, from University of Alabama to Jacksonville State to anywhere I've talked at high schools across the state, at Robertsdale and DeKalb County. I mean, you matter. One, you got people around you that loves you. And it matters that you're successful to all of us. And that's why we're working for workforce development and doing all this stuff to try to make it better for you. Because at the end of the day, you're the generation that's got to fix everything we screwed up. So,
right.
that may be what that is, to be honest.
So you are a proud father and a proud grandfather. You have 4 grandchildren.
I do.
You've got 3 grandsons and a granddaughter.
Oh, that's right.
They're all teenagers.
That's right.
So they are going through all the stuff that we've been talking about.
Right.
What do you tell them, not only as, your Speaker of the House, but also as their granddaddy?
Well, and it's around the house, I'm Poppy.
Poppy, okay.
That's just, they don't think about the Speaker of the House thing. It's just
I'm sure they don't care at all.
No, and we'd talked about our 13-year-old grandsons all being 13, which is kind of odd, but
oh boy.
And I told somebody I may be the best backyard quarterback in the state of Alabama for 13-year-olds. But I think I worry sometimes about the direction that we're going for them, and I feel like every generation in my lifetime has gotten a little bit better, but I also think that generation may not. I worry that we go backwards instead of forwards. In our lifetime, what we've seen is the next generation always had a little bit better. I got better than my mom and dad did. Let's be honest. There's no question about that. And I think they probably had it better than their parents. But I don't know about the next generation. I don't know that we can say that. I worry about that.
What's your message to your grandchildren?
Well, I think of course, they hear it all the time, but first of all, of course, they love playing sports, and I love going to watch them. I mean, as I told you, we're a sports family. And I always, when I get home, I always make it a point that I text every one of them and tell them how good they did. You did a great job. And sometimes it doesn't always work out the way they want it, but it doesn't matter. I mean, they've put forth the effort, they put in the time, and I just feel like they should know that, I feel like you've done a good job. And so we do that. And I take time out to make sure I go with them. And we've got a farm in the county where they can go hunt and fish on. And I always try to carry them out there and spend time with them. The granddaughter's special. I told my son, I said, don't think she's going to get what I can't afford. You need to understand that. And so she knows that too. But she's special. She's precious. She is a very intelligent young lady. She'll be halfway done with college before she gets out of high school. And I'm so proud of her and the work that she's doing. And strong in their church. They're all strong in their church. And it's it's a blessing, I think, for me and my wife to see our sons and how they've developed into good men and become good husbands and good parents.
It seems like faith plays a big role in your life.
Well, it does. I guess I'm one of those, because of our travel and what we do. We don't get to make it at church like we used to, and that's unfortunate. But it always has growing up, and my kids have kind of on their own figured out their pathway, and like I said, they're heavily involved in their churches. One of them's in a small country church where they, the few that goes has to do everything, and the other's in a larger church, and he's just as involved. So it relates back to the kids too. I think it has impact on them.
How lovely, a country church.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess my final question to you would be, what are the things that give you hope when it comes to the future of the state of mental health than substance use disorder for Alabamians.
Well, I think the thing that gives me hope is when, I've had the chance, as speaker, I have a chance to go to a lot of different states and see a lot of different things. And I was in Oklahoma City a couple of years, it's been about 2 years before last, I guess. And we're talking about mental health, and they had a program just on mental health, and they were talking about some things they were doing. And I sat through it thinking, we've already done that. We're doing that, and we're beginning that. So we're ahead of the curve on a lot of it. So that gives me hope. Now, the other thing that gives me hope, and I had a chance to go down earlier, I guess it was last summer, and talk to the County Commission Association with all the county commissions across the state. We got a program called Stepping Up, and I asked them, because it's talking about we need mental health money for jails, we need mental health money for this. I said, well, let me ask you, how many are you using the Stepping Up program? And there was only 17 out of 67. And I said, well, it's there. It's available. You need to be using it. It takes care of that. And now I think there's 47 counties using it just in that short period of time. And now they've actually, and I told one of the county commissioners yesterday at an event we were at, he was talking to me about it. I said, let me tell you something. I said, let me tell you how proud I am of your organization and how proud I am of you for stepping up and start working on the mental health issue. That's a big deal. So we're seeing it now in our counties, we're seeing it in our cities, we're seeing it in our schools. So that's my hope, is that we continue to have that engagement and that buy-in for mental health, that we can continue to put those pieces in the puzzle.
We can do together what we cannot do apart.
That's exactly right.
Alabama Speaker of the House, Nathaniel Ledbetter, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you for listening to One Day at a Time, a Yellowhammer News podcast presented by Longleaf Recovery and Wellness. Be sure to follow Yellowhammer News on Instagram, Facebook, and X. And follow me, Laurie Dhue, on Facebook and Instagram.